So here we are at the end of Pitchfork's top 100 rap albums of all time list. This list dropped a few weeks ago. I've been working my way through it in the last couple videos. I've hit the first 80 on this list. I split that up into two videos. In those videos, I touched on only select picks from the list, ones that either I agreed with or were important to me or vehemently disagreed with. Here in the third and final part, we only have the top 20 to dissect, and I'm going to be going through album by album. This is going to be quite an undertaking, could be a little bit of an ambitious video with some strong opinions. We're into bona fide classic territory. It's time to dissect each and every one of the albums in their top 20. I just want to mention one note. I'm aware of what the number one album is, but I'm seeing the rest of this list for the first time as I write the video script. So this is my first time truly reacting to it. It's been an interesting list so far. There have been some truly horrible picks, but I've also seen some albums and some artists get included that I was very happy with or agreed with the pick, the placement completely. So the list isn't all bad, and I'm expecting that mixture of good and bad here for the top 20. We'll have some great picks. We're going to have some trash ones. Let's go ahead and bring this list home. Kicking things off, number 20, we have De La Soul's Balloon Mind State. It's interesting that Pitchfork is giving this album to represent De La Soul. I'm more of a fan of 3 Feet High and Rising, as well as their second album, De La Soul is Dead. But this is actually a very solid album. I think it gets slept on and overlooked by their earlier work, but it is some of De La Soul's best work. As a reminder, Pitchfork did mention that they were going to try their hardest not to have repeat entries by the same artist on the list. So this is it. This is all we're getting for De La Soul. So Balloon Mind State, it's a great album that really showed the evolution of De La Soul after some real quirky diversity on those first two records. They take a bit more of a hardcore demeanor here, as East Coast hip hop was sort of shifting in that direction as we got into the mid-90s. They still keep their humorous, light-hearted charm that really helped them break out in the years prior to this record. It's got wonderfully jazzy undertones. It's a great record overall. I would put it in my top 35 or top 40, so I don't really agree with top 20, but I'm not super mad at this pick either. Alright, number 19. This annoys me. It's Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang Clan, one of the most important hip-hop albums of all time. It's a top 5 album for me. I just don't know how any publication that respects itself puts it just inside the top 20 like this. I mean, where do I begin? Along with Black Moon's Enter the Stage, this was one of the earliest hip-hop albums from New York that kind of showed that new hardcore demeanor. There was trunk rattling bass, lo-fi but yet forward-thinking beats by RZA, who was flipping these soul samples like nobody else was doing at that time. In addition to this wonderful sampling job, he brought a total of 8 other MCs into the fold. That was unheard of. 36 Chambers, it's a very sonically diverse album. It's dark, it's gritty, but it's also whimsical, and there's really nothing before it or after it that sounds anything like it. The songs Protect Your Neck and Cream are institutionally important in hip-hop history, and this album's reach both for East Coast hip-hop in the 90s and Wu-Tang's empire as a whole is endlessly influential. Putting it at 19 almost minimizes these things. It almost treats Wu-Tang and that empire as an afterthought, when in reality they're the biggest powerhouse in hip-hop history. This is where it all began for them. 19 is an uninspired, underrated spot. You can't even say that this album hasn't aged well. There's a lot of hip-hop albums from this era that have not aged well. This is timeless. It's only gotten better with age. I wonder what albums that don't deserve to be in front of this album will be in front of this album. This is a bad pick. Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full, number 18. That's much more appropriate. This is probably top 25, top 30 all time for me, so really not too far off the mark here from Pitchfork. While Eric B. was one of the most forward-thinking producers of the early golden age, it was Rakim's approach to really how to rap that made this album so important. He was the first rapper to play around with syncopated, unorthodox flows, with rhyme schemes and cadences that the world simply hadn't heard circa 1987. The album's title track, as well as its opener, I Ain't No Joke, should be studied by anybody who is trying to learn the art of rapping and hip-hop in general. I Know You Got Soul was kind of a crossover hit that really didn't sacrifice any integrity, but I will say, if there's one reason that I'd rank this album a little bit lower than Pitchfork does, it's because outside of those 3 tracks, there is kind of a little bit of filler on this record. It does sort of run together. It sounds sort of skeletal in spots. Yeah, it was 1987, and yeah, Eric B. did put on a clinic for about half of this album, but I don't know. This is really my only knock against this record. To include it in the top 20, completely appropriate. Operation Doomsday by MF Doom checks in at number 17. Like Paid in Full, I can kind of understand this pick, but it's a little bit lower on my list, probably top 35, top 40. I personally like Food, which is MF Doom's 2004 solo album, better than really any of his output. But Operation Doomsday broke him out as a force to be reckoned with in hip-hop's underground. It's fun, Doom is witty, it's a little bit lighthearted, but it's also kind of hardcore and lo-fi in spots. It's a really interesting mixture, and it has these almost proto-glitch glitch hop tendencies. They were super unique and they helped define the weirder corners of the underground as we got into the 21st century. It's such a lovable record. The song Doomsday and that Sade flip is just second to none. It's a perfect way to start the album. Operation Greenback, Gas Draws, Go With The Flow, really so many great cuts on this album. Not a lot of weak moments, I will say. It doesn't make my top 20 though. I do think that there is a serious posthumous appeal when it comes to MF Doom. If he had not passed away and left us 5 years ago, I just wonder, would this or any of his albums really be in the top 20? Number 16, DS2 by Future. Absolutely not. This is an okay album at best and totally not worth the top 20. It revolutionized the sound of modern trap, which, I mean, is that really that much of an accomplishment? I will say it was influential, but I think this is one of those hot take picks that Pitchfork has had a number of throughout this list, meant to drum up discussion and controversy. Engagement baiting, basically. I mean, what reliable publication would ever include this album on a top 20 list and slide it 3 spots ahead of Enter the Wu-Tang? I have no problem with modern hip-hop, but in the case of this album, that's nowhere close to number 16. Not even close to the top 20. You better come correct if you're putting anything at this spot on the list. And the quality of this album does not reflect its placement. It's an important modern hip-hop album, but it doesn't belong in the top 20, period, point blank. Get the out of here. Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links at number 15. First, I put this in my top 10. Second, I would not put this ahead of Enter the Wu-Tang. Having said that, top 15 carries some serious weight, and Cuban Links is up to the challenge. It's a cinematic, mafioso rap masterpiece that continued to show RZA flipping deep soul samples like nobody's business. That back and forth tag team action between Raekwon and Ghostface is second to none. It's the best Wu-Tang solo album, hands down. It's got the combination of one of the best beats ever and one of the best guest verses in hip-hop history, both on Verbal Intercourse as Nas shows up. You got other perfect songs like Criminology, Ice Water, and the emotional closer Heaven and Hell. These are perfect, timeless hip-hop songs 30 years on. This album is so deeply rooted in nostalgia for me, literally taking me back to my childhood. I was still riding my bike around the neighborhood, playing Pokemon on my Game Boy when I copped a copy of this. I was in middle school. This album has aged fantastically, both with my taste and the overall scope and importance of hip-hop. It's a truly spectacular album, a nearly perfect record. In part 2, Public Enemy's Fear of a Black Planet struck some fear in me as it came in at number 57. I was worried since Pitchfork prefaced this countdown by saying in most cases, once again, they're not going to include multiple entries from the same artist. So I was thinking It Takes a Nation of Millions of Hold Us Back, which is by far the most important album in Public Enemy's catalog, was going to get snubbed. Not the case. It comes in at number 14, and to be honest, I think this is perfect. Optimal placement. This album revolutionized hip-hop. It made it cool to speak out socially and have this political slant to the lyrics, as Chuck D and Flavor Flav pull that off perfectly. They also have this interesting yin and yang, night and day demeanor, where Chuck has this gruff, aggressive voice and Flav brings the comic relief with one of the best hype man jobs in hip-hop history. It really just makes for such an interesting listen, but it goes way beyond the dynamics between Flavor Flav and Chuck D. The sampling is absolutely off the charts. I talked about how Eric B was so great on Paid in Full. What the Bomb Squad did a year later on this album completely eclipses what Eric B did on that album. The Bomb Squad really cooks up some delectable beats. Even some of those deeper cuts, some of those kind of instrumental tracks are just so impressive from a sampling standpoint. This was way ahead of its time sonically. I think that gets overlooked by the fact that this album was so way ahead of its time lyrically as well. You have some of the most notable songs of hip-hop's golden age on here. Bring the Noise, Rebel Without a Pause, Don't Believe the Hype, and then you have an excellent storytelling cut in Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos. This album has it all. It's probably the best 80s hip-hop album of all time in my book, and I think number 14 is perfectly appropriate placement. We have another nearly perfect placement, number 13, A Tribe Called Quest's The Low End Theory. It's their second album. They have snubbed Midnight Marauders, their third album, which is almost as good as this one. Midnight Marauders is a top 25 album of all time. Major snub. I do give a slight edge to The Low End Theory, though. It's cerebral, it's jazzy. Some of the bass lines and crisp, hard drums that the group who self-produced this thing had sampled, it's just all-time great stuff. Jazz, We've Got, one of my favorite hip-hop songs of all time. It's one of the songs that turned me on to Tribe. Phife Dawg emerges after appearing sparsely on their debut a year earlier, and once again, you have kind of a night and day thing. Q-Tip and Phife sort of play off of each other. They have different voices, different deliveries. It really works. It's a really cool dynamic. Buggin' Out features some head-spinning lyricism. Butter is an unbelievable solo cut from Phife. Check the Rhyme is early 90s East Coast bliss, and Scenario just blows the top off of this album at its end. This is nearly a perfect album. It's got a few slower cuts in the middle, but it's a jazz rap masterpiece overall. It's an excellent placement for Pitchfork, second pick in a row. Well done. Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar at number 12. I was, again, worried about this album not showing up. I was actually more pissed off at the fact that Pitchfork put To Pimp a Butterfly all the way at number 44. I think T-Pab is better than Good Kid, and that's a personal preference, so I do think the two should switch, but, that's subjective. That's my opinion. I would probably put Good Kid, Mad City actually in the top 30. Good Kid, Mad City, let's be honest, it was an incredible album for its time. It's kind of a coming-of-age story that's loosely based on the life of Kendrick Lamar, coming up on the rough streets of his native Compton, California. It's done with an excellent mix of hardcore, streetwise West Coast vibes and accessible, modern-day, mainstream-facing hip-hop. I do think it's a little too soft in spots. I hate the song Poetic Justice with Drake. I think that song is awful. But everything else is pretty high quality. I love J-Rock on Money Trees. I love Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. The OG MC8 brings the house down on Mad City. I do think the end of the album slows up a little bit. It's not as deep and complete of an album as To Pimp a Butterfly. It's also not quite as impressive instrumentally. So while I don't really agree with Good Kid, Mad City number 12, I'm not totally mad at it. I love Kendrick. I love both of those albums, and while I'd kind of switch their placements on this list, this pick overall makes a lot of sense. All right, here we go. I was really expecting to see this one. It's Life After Death by the Notorious B.I.G. at number 11. This album has always been one that's highly overrated. It's a saga of an album. It's nearly a 2-hour-long double album that's littered with elements of the dreaded shiny suit era. Why do people love this album so much? Big prophesized his own death, and there are some really ultra dark elements to this thing, and it is actually a very good album. It's just too long, and there's too much Puff Daddy for my taste. Are we forgetting that he's all over this album? Look, I'll say What's Beef and Kick in the Door, all-time great songs. There are other great moments on here. I love the Locks and Bone Thugs and Harmony features, but number 11, it's really a stretch. I'd stick this in the back half of the top 100, if at all. Publications really do love this thing, and they love overglazing it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but Ready to Die at Biggie's debut clears this one by a mile. This album is a little too much. It's a little too mainstream. It's a little too puffy-facing for me to agree with a placement knocking on the door of the top 10. All right, into the top 10 we go. Here's one I fully expected to see here. It's MF Doom and Madlib's Madvillain. A lot of people consider this top 10 hip-hop all-time material, and while I do enjoy it, it kind of gets relegated back to maybe number 40 or 50 in my book. Madlib is on point here. Doom is as lovable as ever, but the fact that so many people love this thing, it's almost turned me off over the years. All the music nerds think this and T-Pab are the best hip-hop albums of all time, and I asked these people, have you heard mid-90s Mobb Deep? That's more my taste, though. This is more humorous and whimsical, though I do kind of get somewhat annoyed by some of the nerdy references. Madlib gets just a little bit too weird with some of these samples. I don't know. You can't deny that there are a smattering of excellent songs on here, like the All-Timer Accordion, the Heartfelt Fancy Clown, the infectious All Caps, and the absolutely groovy Figaro. I mean, that bass line on Figaro that Madlib flips, but overall, this isn't quite how I like my hip-hop cooked up. I think top 10 is way too high. That's a personal preference. Yes, it goes inside my top 50, but not by much. I know that's going to draw a reaction from some of you, but yeah, I'm ready for it. Let's go. Gemini by Outkast at number 9. This one I understand a bit more, and while I gravitate to their second album, their previous album, AT Aliens, which isn't even going to make this list, which is completely for shame. At Gemini, it's pretty much right there as far as quality goes. I do think this album is a bit long and bloated. I think songs like Mamacita and Liberation really weigh this thing down big time. It didn't have to be an hour and 15 minutes. If you cut those two tracks out, then top 10 conversation becomes relevant for me. For the time being, Aquemini belongs in my 30 to 35 range, with AT Aliens being about 5 to 10 spots higher. The Art of Storytelling 2 has one of the best beats of all time that I've ever heard. And in fact, Organized Noise and Mr. DJ really contribute a wonderful production effort here that's very diverse. The guest appearances, they're selective, but they're impressive. You have Raekwon, you have Slick Rick, you have the guys from Goody Mob and George Clinton showing up on this thing. It's just got such a wide range of sonic diversity. It perfectly represents the Afrofuturism movement within hip-hop, and there's nothing, I mean nothing, that sounds like this album, much like Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. Dre and Big Boy were on another level on this record. But it does draw out, it's a little bit too bloated. AT Aliens was a little more to the point. Kick out a couple of those filler tracks in the album's second half, and this pick looks a lot better. I don't quite agree with number 9. Man, Hell Hath No Fury by Clipse at number 8. I mean, I guess I get it. This album is pretty great, but number 8 of all time? That's something I can't agree with. I love Pusha T. I love Malice. I love the Neptunes from this era. These guys made an album in a terrible year for hip-hop that was really, really good. It towed the line between mainstream and hardcore like a lot of great hip-hop albums do, but I think that's the most impressive thing about this album is how much it rose above its competition for that year, 2006. Other than that, I see this as just a very good album, maybe worthy of the back end of the top 100. In fact, after Let God Sort 'Em Out dropped in the summer of 2025, I don't think this is my favorite Clipse album anymore. Mr. Me Too, Ride Around Shining are excellent cuts though, but number 8 of all time, Pitchfork, man, they're stretching here big time. Another kind of janky pick that I can sort of understand at number 7, it's The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. It's sort of in the same vein as the last two. I get it, but I don't. I can understand it. I can try to decipher why this may be here. My qualms with this pick are the fact that this is as much of a neo-soul and R&B album as it is a hip-hop album. This is not a pure hip-hop album. It is one of the better albums of all time, and it's on a lot of top 10, top 15, top 20 lists when you're talking about all genres. And I don't think you can leave this off your top 100 if you really know what you're talking about when it comes to hip-hop. So it should be on this list, but not at number 7. Doo-Wop That Thing, that's a timeless song. That's the most pure hip-hop moment on this entire record. I think it's the finest moment of Lauryn Hill's impressive but relatively short career. There are really some beautiful, soulful moments on this record where Lauryn delivers just an amazing singing performance. The 2 bonus tracks at the end, Can't Take My Eyes Off You and Tell Him, they are just fantastic. But this album suffers from a serious lull in the middle. While it starts strong with songs like Lost Ones, X Factor, and Doo-Wop, it really does put me to sleep in the middle before picking up towards its end. And again, it's really long. It tests my patience. Number 7 is way too high for a hip-hop top 100 list. But I do realize this album's greatness outside the realms of hip-hop. Number 6 just makes me laugh out loud. This is a joke, right? The number 6 hip-hop album of all time is Rich Gang's The Tour Part 1. Number 6? I've done a lot of these lists. Rolling Stone, I did Apple Music last year, Billboard. I think this is the stupidest pick of any of these lists that I've broken down. I think this is a music publication's equivalent of a shitpost, I'm afraid. This is also just a mixtape. It's not even an album, and while it is solid, it doesn't touch my top 100. This is a joke. This isn't even something I'm going to try to justify or understand. Pitchfork has been having some fire picks along the way, but this one is as cold as ice and as uninspiring as the guys who made this tape. Alrighty, top 5, here we go. I mostly like this pick. I'd slot this in maybe 1 or 2 spots higher. It's Nas's Illmatic. It's probably the most incredible example of street journalism in hip-hop history. A 20-year-old Nas wraps circles around anybody in the game to that point, including guys like Rakim. He weaves together this quick, compact masterpiece with some of the best beat selection of all time. He has as many stories to tell as somebody 4 times his age on this record, and he does it in this unassuming, raw, gritty way that doesn't pull any punches, but also doesn't really glorify the dire conditions that existed not only in the streets of his neighborhood, Queensbridge, but across other hoods in New York City and other cities in the United States. He's witty, his punchlines are sublime, but he also approaches the street journalism from a very serious angle. Sometimes he has a devil-may-care attitude, for instance, saying that sleep is the cousin of death, so I'm just not gonna sleep. I really don't know if there's anything else we can say about Illmatic that hasn't already been said to this point. It's a perfect album. It's arguably the most influential East Coast hip-hop album in history, and while I'd put it a spot or 2 higher, I think Pitchfork kind of redeemed themselves here after that last pick. Surprising pick at number 4. It's an album that I really love and that I always have. That's Ghostface Killah's Supreme Clientele, his second album. As much of a fan of this album as I am, I think this is another attention-seeking pick, as Pitchfork might be trying to diversify the top of their list a little too much. I'd switch Cuban Links at number 15 with this one. I'd probably punt this one back a couple spots into maybe the top 25. This is not the best Wu-Tang solo album. It's the 3rd best after Cuban Links and Liquid Swords, in my opinion. I'll say this though, it's one of the best hip-hop albums of the 2000s. Ghostface has this crazy, confident, flashy, in-your-face stream of consciousness style that just goes so hard. I mean, just listen to the beginning of the song Nutmeg, all that fly shit that he has to say. What rapper could pull that off at that time? RZA and Ghost, they teamed up to make a fantastic project here. But top 5 of all time? Usually I can understand these picks a little, but I think Pitchfork went a little bit too far with this one. I'm not super mad at it. Ghostface is one of my favorite rappers. I love him. I love this album, but I just think about all the albums that could have and should have made top 5 but didn't. And now I'm unfortunately going to have to expand on this point even more with number 3, because it's Juvenile's 4 400 Degrees? No, man, just no. I bet the majority of old school hip hop heads from Juvie's hometown of New Orleans wouldn't even put this in their top 3. I do think this is the best New Orleans hip hop record of all time. I think it beats anything out of the city from either No Limit or other Cash Money albums. That includes anything and everything that Lil Wayne has ever done. But number 3, this album is bloated, man. It runs together. It does not belong anywhere close to any top 10. I mean, what is Pitchfork doing? I could kind of understand Supreme Clientele. Okay, I'll try and contort my mind to understand that one, but I just can't do that with 400 Degrees. While Back That Ass Up is a Southern hip hop institution, Gone Ride With Me is one of my favorite deep Southern hip hop cuts ever. I can't use that to justify number 3. I just don't have the energy anymore. This is getting exhausting. I'm done. It's a good thing I agree with the top pick, because number 2 is also an exhausting pick. It's All Eyes on Me by Tupac. Just stop it. It's a great album. It's better than Biggie's Life After Death when we're talking about double albums from these big stars. And I say that as an East Coast guy and a New York City resident. But number 2, that's a major unjustifiable stretch. The second best hip hop album of all time? I don't think so. Me Against the World is Pac's best album. We didn't see that anywhere on this list. Like Life After Death, publications glazed the living shit out of this album. Yes, it was done right at the end of Tupac's life when he was embroiled in controversy in the bi-coastal war that eventually took his life. You can just hear the tension cutting through in every song, and that is very notable. I think Ambitions as a Writer is one of his best songs. I just listened to it yesterday. I was vibing the hell out of it. But overall, this is a double album. There's a ton of filler. There are a number of other excellent songs on here. Don't get me wrong. You have 2 of America's Most Wanted with Snoop Dogg. That's a West Coast institution. Can't See Me rips open the second disc in spectacular fashion. Picture Me Rollin' is an all-time favorite of mine, and the Rappin' Forte assisted Only God Can Judge Me. That's one of the most important West Coast collabs of all time. But number 2? No, I can't endorse that, especially not for a double album. This thing makes my top 100, yeah, maybe even top 75. You can imagine, though, that number 2 doesn't really sit well with me. Pitchfork, man, they're getting really reckless here in the top 10. But it's all worth it. All of these nonsensical, ridiculous picks, they lead to number 1. And for the first time in my existence, doing these lists, reading these lists for years and years, I have found a list whose number 1 aligns perfectly with mine. I was absolutely shocked to see Mobb Deep's The Infamous in the top spot. This is in most hip-hop fans' top 20 or 25. I do think that Pitchfork is trying probably a little too hard to be different here. But in the process, what they do is pick one of the most dark, hardcore albums in hip-hop history, also in music history. This is one of the most raw, visceral albums in existence. And it was conjured up by 2 19-year-olds enraptured by the battlefield that was the Queensbridge Projects, the very same hood that Nas had chronicled just 1 year earlier on Illmatic. While Nas was a bit more introspective and poetic, Prodigy and Havoc left absolutely nothing to the imagination. They dictated the horrors that went on around them and how that affected themselves, their friends, their family. Again, not really glorifying, just telling some stark, honest, harrowing tales that are so dark and daunting, you start to question if they are embellishing these at all. But then either Prodigy or Havoc just hit you once again with a cold, ruthless, and raw bar that just spins your head and completely cleanses your palate, saying, okay, that's too real to be embellished. This mixes with some of the hardest beats of all time, courtesy of Havoc, and there are actually some lighter moments on here. From an unlikely ally, Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest. He had a little bit of history with Mobb Deep. They used him kind of as their secret weapon. He produces 3 tracks and appears on one, which is the whimsical Drink Away the Pain. He produces that. He also laces the beats for Give Up the Goods, Just Step, and Temperatures Rising, the latter being an ode to Havoc's brother who was on the run from the law at the time. But really, it's these darker moments that really define this thing, the harrowing and thought-provoking survival of the fittest. There's an absolutely chilling piano beat cooked up by Havoc on this track. It's just one of the most fantastic production moments I've ever heard. You have the ominous plotting Eye for an Eye, which featured Nas and Raekwon and kind of reintroduced New York and East Coast hip-hop to mafioso lyrical themes, which led to kind of a revolution within New York hip-hop following the release of this album in April 1995. You have the ode to their home borough, one of the most underrated tracks on this album, QU Hectic, with a swirling saxophone sample and just like this wonderfully dark aesthetic that I just can't really describe. There's some keyboard, some synth that drives the low end of this thing, and my god, it just still sends chills down my spine to this day. And then of course, the best beat of all time, the best hip-hop song of all time, my favorite song of all time, probably the most important song to ever come out of New York City hip-hop. I know that's debatable, but that's how I feel. Shook One's Part 2, of course. It's bone-chilling, it's unforgettable, it's an institution, it is musical bliss for me. And I'm not even mentioning the deep cuts, because I don't want to drag this out too long. Every single cut on here is fire. I'm just so glad, so ecstatic to see The Infamous at number 1. It is, was, and forever will be my personal number 1. The album really helped me through some serious mental health and addiction struggles in earlier years in my life, and it's long been my favorite album of all time regardless of genre. The way I felt when I saw this at number 1 had me feeling like I single-handedly won the Super Bowl. Even though I digested the rest of this list as I went, I had seen on socials before I got into this list that The Infamous was voted in as number 1 by Pitchfork. So it wasn't a huge surprise like the rest of this list as I went through it, but man, does it feel good, and it's a perfect way to end what's been a very interesting, sometimes weird and pointless, but ultimately thought-provoking list from Pitchfork. How do you guys feel about the top 20? What do you think got snubbed overall from the top 100? I can name about 5 or 10 off the top of my head, but I want to hear what you think. Lots to discuss. Leave me a comment below. Let's talk about it. Tell me what you think of this list. There were some really weird, nonsensical picks on this thing. There's a few that were absolute W's, total home runs. This has been fun. If you have not seen the first 2 episodes of this series, go back, have a look. I thank you guys, as always, for your support, for your time, and for your patience. And I'll see you guys soon.